Can you hear me?
I can. You're back.
Okay. So did you ask me a question?
Yes. So your take on the portion of the book of just the Donald Trumpness.
So Donald Trump, Elijah, of course, the whole book weaves in and out around Donald Trump.
Mhm.
As you know, we went to the inauguration back in 2017, January 2017, because Elijah felt very strongly that he had to represent the institutions of government and that he was, uh, you know, um, wanting to, be respectful of the institution, not necessarily of the person. And Donald Trump had invited us to his luncheon afterwards. So we went in, and Elijah and I went up to the president after the meal was served, and Elijah introduced us and said, "Look, you man, I want to work with you. If you are willing, can we sit down and talk about how the American people are being gouged with regards to prescription drug prices?" And I'd love to talk to you about that and see if we can get something done on behalf of the American people. And he, to his credit, Trump turned to Vice President Pence and said, get it done. And they got it done. And so Elijah went in for that meeting. He said he, thought it was going well, but just as soon as the meeting was over, Trump went out of the meeting and lied and said that Elijah Cummings had said that he would go down in history as the best president ever, which is not what Elijah said. Elijah basically said that if you can be the president of all of the people instead of just for some of the people, then you could go down in history as one of the greatest presidents ever. And of course, typical Trump, he twisted Elijah's words. Of course, it left a very bad taste in Elijah's mouth. That combined with all of the investigations that Elijah had to actually end up managing, everything from the children being separated at the border, to the Russian interference in the 2016 election, to Trump's taxes and finances, to his daughter and his son-in-law, Jared and Ivanka's, security clearances and their emails, and you name it, Elijah was involved in it. And he saw up close and personal that this man was not just unfit for the office. He was actually a threat to humanity and also a threat to our democracy.
Mhm. Mhm. One of the things that I actually took away from it as well, and you kind of brought it up, and I'm very proud of Elijah on that, of actually reaching out to have that dialogue. We get so, what I've noticed in the political climate is people, Democrats or Republicans, they tend, especially Black Democrats, tend to take a position, and though they're an elected official, they tend to not want to meet with those that they don't agree with on certain policies and principles. And I just, it takes me back to Martin Luther King, who fought a many a fight with and went to many a table and probably had requested many a meeting with people that he didn't necessarily like or agree with, but in order to move the American people forward, he felt an obligation. And that's what I took from the book as well, is that Elijah took the responsibility of, one, his constituents, the district that he serves here in the 7th District of Maryland, and that, and also of the nation, and that was more important than his own personal likes or dislikes, or his own personal reputation one way or the other. So that to me spoke volumes about the man. And so I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think a lot of times, I've heard so many, not only politicians, but we're hearing, HBCU presidents, whoever actually decided to even go to the White House or what have you during these 4 years, has almost been, uh, uh, you know, villainized as an enemy, because they were doing their job. So I want to strongly just give my praise when it comes to that.
Yeah, so Elijah was known for working across the aisle. He believed that we need to put country before party. He believed that service to the American people and to his constituents was paramount. That, you know, that all of the other stuff was just, you know, ancillary, and that we had to focus on the bottom line. Again, he's a bottom line kind of guy. He was absolutely serious about his duties, and he took them seriously, so seriously that I do believe, you know, he took on the weight of the world. Certainly, he took on a lot. And I think it caused a level of pain and stress that actually probably expedited his passing.
Hmm.
That being said, you know, Elijah has worked with Republicans, you know, for a long time, and and didn't feel that Donald Trump was any different. If there was the opportunity to get something done for the people, he was going to find it, you know, by hook or by crook. And so, you know, he stepped out on faith, and he did what he thought was right. And he got what he got, which was, you know, a cold shoulder, a turn back, and eventually an attack.
Hmm. How so, you know, I'm going to come back to some of that, but how has the book been received so far?
So far, so good. So the national media has, you know, kind of really been welcoming. I've been on all kinds of circuits in terms of people who have read it. They keep saying people who knew him who have read it.
Hmm.
They keep saying that they hear his voice, that they can hear his voice as they read the book. And we've gotten good reviews that have been put out so far. And so the book has been well received. We're, of course, we're always looking to increase book sales. And of course, I'll be encouraging everybody to consider this book as a gift for people for Christmas.
Hmm.
I want this in the hands of everybody, everybody who, you know, who cares about the future of this country. And also, you know, one of the goals that Elijah had for this book, two of them, one was to warn the American people about Donald Trump. But the other one was to inspire young people to know that they can overcome obstacles. And Elijah had many obstacles, especially young in his life, that he was able to overcome and rise to become everything that he could be. He wanted to encourage young people to do the same.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to go to that as well. He had shared with me and um, that at one point in his life, in his childhood, how they had deemed him, or he was in special ed education in school, and that was something that he and I had in common because I was too in special ed in school, and I know some other people who are brilliant today who were in that same category, and just hearing some of the stories of his childhood and his early freedom fighting moments for I guess swimming pool equality, you know, was it just again it told a lot about the man that you met much later, you know, and
Yeah.
that spark that started at a young age. And you know, and that's why I even mentioned, I know that you have had similar sparks at a young age. I know that your parents were very involved in the NAACP. Share a little bit about that, growing up in a house like that.
Yeah, so you know, my parents were this, and my mother passed, but my dad is still living. But they were always very conscious, and they wanted us to be conscious too. So we had a little library growing up, where we had, of course, a set of encyclopedias. But in that library, we also had all kinds of books. You know, books about slavery, books by famous people like Malcolm X and Huey P. Newton. We had books, 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 and more books, and we read like nobody's business. My mother was an avid reader. She was a speed reader. She could read thick tomes, you know, in just a short amount of time. And because, you know, I often joke that we were born in the library because my mother was so kind of book driven. And so, you know, we were a household of readers, and being conscious about American history was just a part and parcel of who we were as a family unit, even though my father served in the US military. And as you well know, when you serve in the US military, people tend to, you know, think and ascribe, especially African Americans, as being conservative. But, we were wide-eyed about, the history of this nation and the role of African Americans in it. And so, we were always encouraged to give back, to be involved, to be leaders. And my mother and father didn't treat my sister and I any differently than my brother in terms of the expectation of excellence.
Mhm.
And so, my mother always encouraged us to, be as independent as possible, to, find careers that would inspire us, but also allow us to, be independent economic units so that we didn't have to, be dependent on necessarily anybody else. That being said, my dad was a president of the NAACP chapter where he was, and he was also at one point the executive director of the Democratic Party. I have gone on to become the chair of the Democratic Party in the state of Maryland. I've been involved in all kinds of stuff, both community level, but also board service at a national level. Professionally, of course, I often talk to people about, starting on Capitol Hill in a House Ways and Means Committee, Social Security Subcommittee, building a coalition to fight against the privatization of Social Security, going on to become Charlie Rangel's chief of staff, and going over to the National Urban League, working as their senior resident scholar for health and income security, where we did really cutting edge work around welfare reform, around Social Security and other issues. Then being recruited to join the staff of the as vice president of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, where I created their think tank. And again, rose to the forefront of helping to lead the fight against privatization. But throughout all this time, and then of course in 2005, I started my own business. So I actually built a firm and I built a nonprofit. And throughout all of this time, I served. I served on almost a dozen nonprofit boards and one, private board. And I've been involved in community groups. And so with that, it's just been a journey. I have lived my values. I have walked the walk. And along the way, of course, I met a beautiful man whom I love deeply and dearly. And I was able to support him as in his leadership role. And so, it's just been a journey and I feel blessed for it.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt, no doubt, and it is very evident that you're more than just a pretty face. So yes, indeed, like I said, you're a power force, and that sparks, and and so just knowing that from a childhood, it was sparked in you, seeing it sparked in Elijah so early in his life as well, and just seeing the two of you kind of do your thing together. It's again, as I was just reading the book, and all the different stories, and just how much and how he felt about you, that he spoke so highly of you in the book, and throughout the book, of just your importance in his life, and how he was in your support when he was at his weakest, at his sickest, which also really was touching. And I can recall moments even myself when he was in the hospital and I paid him a visit, and you were sitting there, and you were still running for governor at the time, and kind of deciding on if you wanted to get out, and he was still trying to encourage you to stay in, but you felt it was more important at that time to really be to really look over his health, and I knew that there was more to it, though that you guys were kind of private in that. I knew was more to it about his health than had been revealed at the time, but yeah, but throughout the entire book, that is very plain to hear his love for you and yours for him.
Yeah, people didn't know that, Elijah lived with a long-term illness, and it caused him to live each day, looking for the bottom line. How can we be effective and efficient with the time we have? He was very time conscious. So much so that, he just impressed upon everybody that, we had to get things done. We had to get things done. And so with that, it was just, I would estimate that we spent probably more than 130 days in the hospital. And I say we because we had a routine, and I think except for maybe 5 of those, I spent every single night and morning in the hospital with him. There was a time, and many days, by the way, especially on weekends. And so, in the beginning, when he first had his heart valve replacement surgery, I still had an office in DC. And so I tried my best to go down and make sure that the people there were still getting direction. And then, of course, I pulled back and I chose to run for governor after being asked to. And I felt very strongly that Black women's voices needed to be heard. And so I did that. But then when he relapsed, so I did that actually after he got well and went back to work. And then he relapsed several months later. And then I dropped out of the race to care for him. And so, people don't know how many times that we were in the hospital. They don't know how hard the caregiving aspect of this was. They don't know the economic toll that it takes, when you, have to focus on, helping your loved ones survive. And we were blessed because there are many families that don't have any income when they have these situations. But we were blessed because Elijah continued to have an income. And so, and I often thought about, walking around the halls of the hospitals and seeing people in their rooms with nobody there. These people are gravely ill and they don't have family members. And they don't have family members because everybody has to work, you know?
Yeah.
So, they're just, a whole lot of challenges. We need to think about how we support caregivers in our country.
Mhm.
We need to think more clearly about, the whole caregiving system. It was an eye opener for me to go through it. And so that being said, I think that, certainly the attacks that Elijah sustained from Donald Trump in the summer of 2019, caused Elijah a lot of pain. I think it accelerated his stress levels, which of course then accelerated, I think, his decline. And so with that, it was just a fraught last few months of his life. And I was initially angry
Mhm.
because I felt like we were undergoing an attack because it wasn't just him, it was me too. And that I had to give it to the Lord. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, because I was angry. I was ready to fight.
I understand. I understand. Yeah, and it's that is, him going through that struggle too, and just thinking about one of the biggest fights that he was trying to see through for the American people was prescription drug cost, and just that I guess that toying the president with with that whole piece. Um, let's talk about that. I mean, that was pretty. It showed how little of a man Trump is, but it showed the urgency as well that Elijah had, not only for himself but for the larger populace of people who can't afford.
So, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So Elijah, was very sensitive because of his own health challenges. I think he was doubly sensitive to the challenges that other people went through with regards to healthcare access, but also prescription drugs. He heard story after story after story of people who could not afford to pay the skyrocketing prices that these drug companies were charging. I mean, the over 1 year period, the cost would rise like 10, 12, 100% in terms of the cost of some of these drugs. I mean, even drugs like, insulin, rose. And so with that, Elijah, was very concerned. He met more than one person who expressed that, that their loved one died
Mhm.
because they couldn't afford the cost of drugs. And so, all these stories were swirling through his head, and he was just like adamant that we have to do something about it. Now, he met with Donald Trump. He explained the issue, but Donald Trump never did anything in Elijah's lifetime. When Donald Trump found out about this book, which was, by the way, before its publication, and of course was entering a desperate campaign season, he did pass some this past summer of 2020. He did some executive orders which haven't done anything to reduce the price of prescription drugs. But he's claiming that he's done something, which is complete and utter BS. And of course, he did it without ever giving any kind of acknowledgement to the fact that the House of Representatives passed the Elijah E. Cummings Lower Prescription Drug Costs Now bill back in December of 2019 in honor of Elijah's
Oh,
ongoing
wow.
fight. And so Republicans in the Senate have decided not to move that bill, and the President of the United States hasn't asked anybody to move that bill. And he's basically pretending that he's doing something while ignoring the solution, which is named after Elijah and sitting in limbo between the House and the Senate right now.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, these are things that a lot of people don't know. A lot of people need to, and that was really it opened my eyes to some things. As you know, I've not been a Biden fan over the years either. I've got still big issues with the '94 crime bill, but I will give you a surprise in that after reading this book, I have decided to vote for Biden and in more of a in more I guess as an honor or respect due to Elijah because I know that's where he would place his vote and throughout the struggles of his entire political career, how important it is to move the country forward together, even in all of even with our differences and chaos and whatnot. I think that that's where he would vote, and I wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that. And Elijah would have been so glad to hear that because, he felt very strongly that we do not have a choice, that Donald Trump is the worst of the worst. And Elijah died before he saw his terrible response to the COVID-19 crisis. But he would not have been surprised because Elijah felt very strongly that Donald Trump had no concern for humanity. In fact, was very willing to, he said that he had a streak of cruelty that could be seen in the border policies in terms of the treatment of those Latino children and families at the border. And so, he felt firmly that, with Donald Trump hiring known white supremacists in the White House, with Donald Trump passing policies that were supportive of white supremacist agendas, really kind of trying to shut down US immigration, particularly from Black and Brown countries. That Donald Trump, if he manages to get a second term in office, that the pain wouldn't just be felt by Latinos at the border. He felt we were next, and he did know that and believed and called Donald Trump a racist. And believed that this man was trying to roll back the civil rights movement gains in this country. And so, with that, we're not required to love every candidate we vote for. In fact, we might have issues with them. But what we are required to do is to weigh the pros and the cons, and we are required to analyze the track record of the people who are running and to understand whether or not their platforms and their performance is more likely to give us an opportunity to move toward a more perfect union, one that embraces diversity, equity, and inclusion, and one where we can rationally work towards the kinds of reforms that we need, whether it's policing, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education. And so Elijah, of course, would have wholeheartedly supported Biden Harris.
Yeah, yeah. So Maya, tell me what's next? What are some of the next things going on next 30 days or up until election?
What's going on in the country or what's going on with me? I
Uh,
missed.
yeah, both.
Yeah. So I am doing everything I can to get Elijah's word out about, the man and the mission and the message. I'm speaking to all kinds of groups across the country, everybody from sororities, haven't had any fraternities, but church groups, national media, local media. I'm basically on a media tour and an organization tour to encourage people to vote, 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 vote. And I'm sharing Elijah's message as a way for people to understand what's at stake. And I'm also, of course, working on my book, which is called Rageism, how to basically dismantle structural racism.
Oh, wow.
And that book is expected to be out next summer. And so with that, I've got a lot on my plate, and I am happy to have some kind of role in trying to stop Donald Trump from taking office again. I think that we're in for some heartache as a country, because I think that no matter what the outcome is, if he loses, he's not going to go easily. And unfortunately, if he manages to steal the election in some way, then, Elijah felt very strongly that we would be doomed as a country. And you might ask, why would he care? Because, Elijah was born into the Jim Crow South. He knew an America that turned its back on African Americans, one that, didn't allow Black people like him and his family to walk in the door of stores downtown or restaurants, one that designated separate and unequal schools for Black and Brown kids. But he saw the power of how you can use your voice to challenge the legal system, to challenge the system of government, basically challenge it and then change laws to make a difference. He saw the power of the civil rights movement in his own life and how it made a substantive difference in the lives of those around him. And while the struggle is ongoing in terms of making this a more perfect union, he felt very strongly that a democracy that allows you your First Amendment right to speak out, your right to protest. I mean, this is important for actually ensuring us freedom and equity. And you can't get that in a dictatorship. You can't get that in a repressive system. And that is why he became a staunch defender of democracy, even though he was born into a system that, was very, oppressive for African Americans.
Well, how can people get the book? Where can they find this great book?
The book is everywhere where books are sold. Any online forum, Amazon, you can go into your local bookstore and get it. And so everywhere where books are sold, this is published by HarperCollins. We're better than this, my fight for the future of our democracy. I should say that the foreword was written by Speaker Nancy Pelosi. And then there are excerpts from the eulogies that were given by Barack Obama and President Clinton and Hillary Clinton at the end. And so I encourage you to read it. And if you don't like to read, I encourage you to get the audiobook, because Lawrence Fishburne, world-renowned actor Lawrence Fishburne, did an excellent interpretation of Elijah's voice in the audio version of the book. And I also narrated my chapter in the audiobook. So please do either purchase the hard copy book or listen to the book on audio.
All right. Great, Maya. That man, you knocked it out the park. We appreciate you being on the show again. Like I said, much love and warm wishes are for you and your family. We are prayerful that the book as well will be a #1 bestseller for many moons, and we hope and pray as well that the nation will heal in this upcoming election, will make the right decisions and move us forward. So again, thank you, Maya, for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Gary. I just want to say thank you for all the help and assistance you and Callie have given me, this emotional support, as well as, financial when I ran for office, and certainly your time and energy. I just love you all both, and I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
No, we love you back, and you're quite welcome. Folks, that is our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Until next week, this is Gary Rockman, your real estate rock star, and you have been tuned into Connection.